G'day and welcome to Cuba de Rio. I'm Matt Scolle and we're in Brazil, if you can't guess it, and I can't believe it, but somehow in our first week I encountered a sort of carnival-y style celebration, and this was the result. How good's that? But an absolutely incredible country. I'm thoroughly enjoying my time here so far. This week what we explore is the far western regions, the outback of Brazil, but not quite. It's all swampy out that side of this country. So we do the Patanals, Brazil's eco-tourism capital, and make our way towards the red centre of this mighty, great big country. I think this is the week where we actually traveled the most miles because we went some crazy distances. We pretty much have traversed a third of the entire continent in this trip. So it's a big week. So enjoy. We're in Brazil, and this is the first time I've got a chance to whip out my mic in 2 or 3 days of being here. We're at a balneário, which are these amazing, like, clear rivers that run past the town of Bonito. Bonito is like the eco-tourist... Oh no, a monkey's stealing my case. You fucking thief. No! Put it down. That's my case. What are you going to do with it? God damn it. So yes, a macaque stole my podcast microphone case, and then when discovered I had no food in it, tossed it from the highest palm tree in this swimming centre. What we're in is called a balneário, and it's something of that nature. They speak Portuguese in Brazil. It's been a challenge. It's really strange. I've been speaking Spanish to the locals here, and they've been understanding me, so we're getting by. But the fact that I'm not so confident in Portuguese has made the last few days, I've been in Brazil 3 days now, quite the adventure, because you wander into a conversation and you have no idea where it's going to go, whether they're going to understand you like some can, or whether they're just going to look blankly at you as you attempt to speak a different language to them. It's a lot of fun. But Brazil, easiest border crossing I've had coming from Bolivia to Brazil, because they've got a little grace period now for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And so I just walked into Brazil. It was literally a single stamp in my passport, and then I wandered in. And then I was like, oh no, I've got to change some Bolivian money, and had to wander straight back out of Brazil, just crossed the border back into Bolivia, and got my money changed, because money exchanges here, especially done by individuals, are illegal. So yeah, that made life a little different. The feel here in Brazil is really strange. It's very big, and the cars are huge. We're back to the land of sort of trucks and utes and those sorts of things. So it's very similar to Mexico in that regard. But the food as well is in huge portions. What you do here in Brazil is you pay by kilo, and basically all the meals are these sort of buffet style things, and you just go along, serve yourself what you like. Some rice, some black beans and sauce. That's back. That's awesome. And then some meats and the like, and then you whack your plate on a scales, and they tell you how much you owe them. It's a great way of delivering food to the customers. However, the problem is, for me especially, is my eyes are always bigger than my budget can. So yeah, it's gonna test my self-restraint, that's for sure. Where we are now is called Bonito, and it's the ecotourism capital of Brazil. I think the way that it's won that title is by having entrance prices so exorbitant that the natural thing that you want to go see is protected just because of its prohibitive pricing. We're in a balneario, that's what it's called in Portuguese, and these are these lovely bathing parts in crystal clear waters full of fish, these sort of salmon-y looking things, and dourado, which are these massive like golden fish covered in gold glittery scales in the sun, and they're great fun to swim around because they're just so chill around people. But yeah, these balnear rios, they're very expensive to get into, and so the last 2 times we've sort of snuck in. Today we hitchhiked and got in an ice cream van with a guy. Yeah, you can do that. And the ice cream truck needed to do a delivery to this particular place, and so we just walked straight. Well, we sort of masqueraded in here and saved ourselves paying some $25 Australian to get into this place. So that's a saving and a half. So make sure you do that. Sneak in an ice cream van to Balnear de Rios. I'm sure I pronounced that one word about 5 different ways this podcast. But Bonito's pretty darn awesome, and it's got incredible surrounds. We're in the sort of country that is home to the world's largest swamp, bigger than the Everglades. It's about the size of Queensland, which is the second biggest state in Australia. And it's absolutely large. So we might go check out the Patanals, is what they're called. It's about half of Paraguay and the majority of these 2 states of Mato Grosso and Mato Grosso del Sur in the western part of Brazil. We're in Brazil's Pantanal, which is basically the word for swamp in both Spanish and Portuguese. And it's a massive area. It's about the size of Victoria. It's 235,000 kilometres of swamp, and it basically constitutes this western part of Mato Grosso and half of Paraguay and a little corner of Bolivia. It is an absolutely whopping great big swamp. And today we kicked off the tour by going piranha fishing. I think that's the go-to tourist card for most tours in this Amazonian basin is send the tourists piranha fishing. They'll love it. And I had no success in any of my piranha fishing exploits in the Amazonian River, in the jungles of Bolivia, but this time I pulled out 1 big piranha, 2 big piranhas. I pulled out freaking 6 piranhas, and they were all of edible size, which was amazing. I more than like last week I'd caught 1 fish in my life, and it was about the size of my index finger, and now today I've caught 7 fish in my entire life, and 6 of them were today. It was brilliant. My technique was pretty flawless. We were using cow's heart as bait, and then once you've had a nibble, they're such aggressive little eaters, these piranhas, that it's not even, sometimes you wouldn't even hook them. They would just hold on to the meat as you hauled them out of the water. And so you'd send them airborne. As they came out of the water, they'd realise, oh shit, I'm out of the water. But they already had too much momentum, and then they flew over your head and onto the bank, flying piranhas. It was fantastic. And this was how I caught most of my piranhas, just by flinging them over my head and onto the bank. It was brilliant. And look, I managed to record one of my piranhas. How good is that? And then at night time, we headed out on the boat because the Pantanal is the best place to see jaguars. This is their prime habitat, not wandering through jungles, but wandering through swamps. They're a bit like tigers in that regard. They quite like a bit of water. And the Pantanals they're nice. What we're on now is the River Miranda, which is a river in the western part of Mato Grosso state there. And it's pretty. It's got loads of sort of vegetation floating down it. Like hundreds of caiman can be visible at this time of night. Their eyes glow red in the spotlight. And it's estimated that there's 40 million caiman in the entire Pantanal. Don't know who made that estimate, but they are pretty freaking dense in number here. But the highlight of the night tour was not, in fact, a jaguar whose eyes glow green. That's what we were all looking for in the spotlight, green eyes. But in fact, it was some capybara, which are the world's largest rodents. These are rats which grow up to 45 kilograms and can live 10 years before, apparently, according to the guide, their back legs give out and they just die. So there's some factual information flying around and some not so factual information. But yeah, it was a pretty decent tour. and I'm so stoked that I caught my fish finally. I can understand what the fuss is all about, but thank God I'm not surviving off these things, because that would be a friggin' hassle. I'm off to dinner now, which is going to be this huge, gorgeous Brazilian buffet, which is going to be absolutely destroyed. Dawn over the Miranda River, and I was up early enough this morning to upload podcasts on the Wi-Fi before people are up, that I managed to capture both the pre-dawn bird noises and then the post-dawn. And so as soon as the sun hit the tops of the trees, the birds went ballistic, and it was a pretty amazing place to be, just sitting in that soundscape. It was great. But then it was a buffet breakfast, destroyed that. This is how to travel these tours. Buffet breakfast, and then we're on the safari truck, rumbling down the roads. And it is a strange thing, this Patanal, because the roads are the highest point in the Patanal. And so all sorts of animals have to cross it and the like, and wander down it during the night to stay dry and those sorts of things. So there was jaguar footprints on the ground. We saw a weasel, which is quite rare, just scampering across the road behind us. We saw capybaras, those gigantic rodents, scampering across the road. A lot of scampering going on this tour just in front of the car. We saw jabiroos, which I didn't know, but they are monogamous and they nest for life in a single nest their entire time, and so they come back every year and build the same nest up again. So they had this huge sort of apartment-sized nest going on, and apparently it's such a feature that other birds come and join them, and so there's a little community of birds all nesting in the jabiroos' nest. But then we got to this farm. And this is a sad part of the Patanals. A large majority of the Patanals is completely unprotected land, and is all sort of mainly in private hands and being used for cattle. And so they can, the cattle just sort of roam around, and there's large tracts of cleared land. It's not all forest like it should be, which is quite disappointing, but it means that you get these large open spaces that are great for spotting birds. And this particular farm that we came to had everything. It had macaws, it had guinea fowls that I enjoyed chasing around with my mic. Also got a new feather for my hat from these gorgeous birds with their polka dot sort of coats. And then when we were in the forest, we were wandering from sort of patch of tree to patch of trees that were left behind when the farmers decided to clear this land. And we saw all sorts of things like nesting macaws, which were having a ball, and we saw an armadillo, what are they called? Can't recall. But we saw the little forest guinea pigs. We saw heaps. It was great. It was just me and this guide wandering around, and we went across Anaconda Field Swamp. That was the coolest thing. We came out of one of these forested sections at one point, and we had birds screaming, going, "Ah, people!" And then we had this caiman dash out of the grass near us and go into the water. And then the next thing we did was just step into the water and then wade sort of waist deep through this swamp to the other side. We were in this water for about 5 minutes, and in an instant, I realised what was wrong with my survival experience in Bolivia, in that it was completely risk-free. There was nothing of this sort of nature where there was a guide prepared to just roll up his jeans and start wading through the water. So, yeah, it was tame survival is what my Brazilian tour was, whereas this was a fancy tour where I'm being fed 3 times a day, and here we were, just a guide and me, climbing through caiman-infested and anaconda-ripe sort of swamps. It was brilliant. Had so much fun. And then we came back to the farm, as you could probably hear in the background there. And where I'm standing now is next to one of the sort of parts of the swamp that hasn't dried up. And I'm just looking at a capybara having a bath. He's been there the entire time I've been recording this piece, just sort of wallowing in the water. And there's caiman all around him that are just leaving him to his own devices. So the swamp is a pretty incredible place, and all I've got left in this amazing part of Brazil is another buffet lunch, and then we're off north towards Brasilia. It's Campo Grande's 111th birthday, and it's a big party here in what would be the most boring state capital of Brazil if it weren't for today being the day it is. 1905, Campo Grande was founded here in the middle of swamp country, and now it's a gigantic sort of central hub. It's got a major airport and all sorts of things. The town planners got their hands on it pretty early in the piece, and it's almost entirely sort of 3-lane, one-way road system around the entire city, blocks. It's an ugly place, but today it's come alive because it's a day to celebrate. And what a way to do it. The Brazilian music, on the whole, is fantastic. Not only did they have up-to-date sort of songs, like these guys are playing a rendition of Adele, I think it is. And in Bolivia, they were playing the bloody ABBA and Dancing Queen and things like this. So they're up-to-date. And then the parade itself was spectacular. It had the classic tent full of officials and military people that were clapping for 3 hours straight. But at the front of the parade were a public health warning, and they had 2 wrecked cars that were the victims of speeding accidents on the backs of trucks, and that's what led your parade. Very happy start to the whole thing. And then behind that are all the schools showing off the different courses and the different products from the area and the like. A lot of inclusion of people with disabilities, which was great to see. And then you had these guys, which are the first marching band I've actually heard on this trip. Close to 8 months of travelling, and these are the first marching band that actually have control over their volume levels. The drums aren't just bashing it out the entire time, so it was quite pleasant to listen to. And then at the end, of course, you had the Carnivale, which, well, I did not expect to encounter this early in the Brazilian piece. This is, like day 5 or something like this? And then there was already a guy in tons of feathers dancing around, having a great time. So, yeah, for a city whose top 4 attractions on TripAdvisor are parks, this is a very welcome change to what was going to be a boring day waiting for a bus to Brasilia. And coming up, I thought over the next few weeks I'd try and get a litany of perspectives on the Rio Olympic Games. And so everyone I met had something to do. I met volunteers, I met people, I met someone whose brother was a participant in the Australian team, a young man called Pearl in the Australian water polo team. And this person that I speak to this week was travelling with the sister of our mate Pearl. So yeah, it's a pretty great time I had with these guys on the Patanal, so I'll let her introduce herself and we'll get on with it.
I'm Kelsey Axelrod. I'm from Seattle, Washington, but I lived in San Francisco the past 3.5 years.
And what were you doing in San Francisco?
I used to work for a PR agency called Spark PR. Yeah, doing PR.
And what are you doing in Brazil? Why have you come down this way?
So I'm traveling with a friend of mine who's Australian, and we studied abroad together about 5 years ago, and we wanted to plan a big trip. So we're traveling for about 3 months together, and her brother was recently in the Olympics, so we planned our trip around coming to the Olympics, and then we'll keep going.
So what were you doing back in the Olympic Games? How long did you spend in the marvelous city?
We were there about 2.5 weeks. We saw Kate's brother is on the Australian water polo team, so we saw all their water polo games. We saw fencing, we saw beach volleyball, and track and field, or as you call it, athletics.
Athletics.
in Australian.
Track and field actually makes a lot more sense because it kind of describes what they're doing.
Exactly, because I was a field athlete. I was a discus thrower. And, we needed to have our separate name.
Yeah. And how come you stopped? Why are you no longer a discus thrower for the US?
Yeah. I stopped in college. It was too much time after a year in college. So stop throwing it. I reached my as much effort and as far as I wanted to throw it, and to get to any further I would have had to put a lot more effort in. Yeah.
How far could you throw by the end there?
About like 110 feet. Yeah. So it's like
35.
It's like good for a high schooler, high school thrower.
I would say so.
Yeah. But to get any further you gotta like put a lot more time in, so.
I always wonder how you get started with those random athletic sports, especially pole vault. Mm-hmm. Did you ever have a crack at that?
I didn't. So I got into discus throwing because I ran cross country for my sophomore year of high school, and the women's cross country coach was also the women's throwing coach, and she was like, "You should try throwing because you're really tall and you like probably would be good at it."
Yeah.
So that's what I did. and I wasn't like a fast distance runner, so I wasn't going to be a distance runner or a sprinter, but I still really liked track. So, yeah. So that's how I started doing discus throwing. And
stepping it back to the Olympic Games, what was the feel in Rio for the time that you were there?
So when we were there, the first place we stayed was Copacabana, literally like 3 blocks away from the beach volleyball court. And so that was pretty crazy over there. There's always people there, like the beach volleyball stadium, the guy that was in there the announcer would get everyone going. He'd have some songs and stuff and get everyone cheering. The other stadium, so then to get out to BRA, where a lot of the other stuff is, it was about like an hour and a half to get there.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the vibe was like a little bit lower. Like it wasn't as crazy, like, oh, this is the Olympics as I thought. I think partially because it was like not full.
Yep.
There wasn't like as many decorations as I thought, or like loud music and stuff. Like definitely still a lot of like good environment, but not as many as I thought it would be.
So given you were there to see an Australian water polo player, how did you manage that with your Team USA vibe?
I know. I cheered for Australia only in water polo, but USA for everything else. And Australia and USA were not in the same bracket for water polo.
Damn it.
So if they had been, I was like, I want USA.
Conflict.
Yeah, I wanted them to play in the final. I would have cheered for both. Although I actually know a water polo player for Australia. I don't know any USA water polo player. So although I am from the US, maybe I would have cheered for Australia a little more in that case.
Yeah. And what was the sense in Rio, just outside of the Olympic Games? Was the city excited to have it?
We talked to people who were both ways. Like, some people were really excited because it really draws attention to Rio and, like, it's really fun for them. And then, on the other hand, there was a lot of people there, maybe not as much infrastructure as they needed, and the people felt like the Brazilians felt like the money could have been put towards a lot of other things that would have benefited them rather than hosting the Olympic Games, where a lot of those facilities won't do anything after this. Yeah. Like in the U.S., I think the news portrayed it a lot differently than the actual environment there. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like protests all the time. We did see one protest, but people weren't like protesting every day, and it wasn't like
Are you riddled with Zika as well?
Yeah, probably. No. I got sick for like 4 days. I just had a flu, so maybe.
That's like one of the symptoms of Zika,
I know.
in fact.
Maybe it was. But I think I started to get sick in Argentina, so.
All right, nice.
I don't know.
So what's the trip been so far? You passed through the games, but what else have you done?
Yeah, so I started in Chile, and I just did Santiago and Valparaiso. And then we went on to Buenos Aires, where Kate and I met up, and we were in Buenos Aires for about a week. And then we took some day trips out of there. And then we went to Iguazu Falls for 2 nights, and then we went on to Rio. And then we were in Rio for 2.5 weeks, and then we just came to the Pantanal, which is where we are now.
The Patanal.
Yeah.
So this is like your first sort of natural thing. Did the Patanal live up to your expectations?
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome. I like really want to keep going to more natural places, and I'm like not as excited about going to the big cities anymore. I mean, they're cool, but a big city is a big city everywhere, I think. So.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. So what sort of things did you see in the Patanal? What was your experience versus the one the audience has already heard of mine?
Oh, I've already heard yours. So we did 3 days and 2 nights there. We went out and we stayed in the same lodge, obviously, where we met each other. And it was a beautiful lodge, like had a swimming pool. Like the guides are really great. We went canoeing, we did a night boat, we did a day boat, did a little... The one thing I wanted to do more is like a little more hiking or walking around. Yeah. So we did this like safari jeep tour kind of thing, and then just like walked around a little bit. And we did see macaws, and we saw a lot of other birds. We saw these, however you say, capybaras.
Capybaras,
yeah.
The world's biggest rodent.
Yeah. We saw a lot of those. We saw a lot of caiman. We're not lucky enough to see a jaguar.
Yeah, that's what.
But the people that were there about the day before saw a jaguar, so we were almost there.
Yeah. So how does I know you're only in the other South American countries for a little while, but how does Brazil compare with your Argentina and Chile?
I loved Argentina. I was like ready to move to Buenos Aires.
I'm down. I'm coming in, guys.
Well, first of all, I found out that their university education is free, not just for Argentinians, but for like anyone.
Shit.
And that includes grad school. Yeah, so I found that out, and I was like, well, maybe I should look into that.
Come back and do my master's in Buenos Aires. Yeah. That would be cool.
I speak Spanish. I don't speak any Portuguese, so I'd say I did enjoy like Argentina more because I can like speak to people.
Yeah.
Where it has I've gotten by here.
How are you finding the Portuguese? Because that's a point of difficulty for me as well. This is the first time in 7 months of traveling that I don't speak the language.
Yeah. Knowing Spanish really helps, but also you understand about like 30% of what someone's saying. You're like, yeah, I think. And not as many people speak English here as I thought. Like even in Rio, it was like, I don't know. There was more in Argentina actually, more in Buenos Aires that spoke English than in Rio. So.
It reminds me of this morning when like our hostel lady was describing what's going on in Campo Grande today, and once she stopped talking, we all looked at each other and were like, let's compare answers, see what she was saying.
Let's see who got the most out of that.
Yeah, what are the frequencies here?
Yeah. I like Brazil. I'm really excited to get to a Spanish-speaking country, get back to Spanish.
Yeah, you've got a lot to look forward to in Colombia and Cuba.
Yeah.
And Costa Rica. You're
Costa
doing
Rica and
my
Panama.
trip in reverse.
I'm basically doing everyone's trip in reverse, I think. Most people, I feel like it's easier to go the way you went, I think.
I think the case is when you start traveling and you go in a particular direction, you just start meeting more people. You're going against the flow, so you're going to hit more debris as it comes past you. And like that's why I'm sure there's been people that I could have traveled with the last 7 months, but they're just like 5 days ahead of me continually.
That's so true.
I've never met them.
True. Yeah, but it's great because you told me everything to do in Cuba, and we met some other guys that told us everything to do in Colombia.
Yeah.
And that's way better than like reading about it. So.
For sure. And this is not your first rodeo with the podcast either, though.
It's not my first. Yeah.
Not your first rodeo.
I used to do a podcast for Spark.
That was your PR firm.
That was, for my PR firm. Yeah, the PR firm. You can listen to it on SoundCloud. It's called Fresh Friday. And I hosted it with my coworker, Monica. And it was kind of a joke podcast that we started to just, like, learn how to get into podcasting. But since then, it's really since I've left work, it's really, they hired a new person to keep it going. So apparently it's really taken off now, and it's, like, a lot more external facing. But, they still use my name, so
it's
Fresh
still
Friday.
in the credits.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's cool. Yeah.
So what's a memorable episode of Fresh Friday like? What's its structure and all that?
So the episodes are about 10 minutes long. Every episode we tried to make it shorter. Like the first one, well,
hey guys, succinct. This is Fresh Friday. Thanks for listening. Bye.
We're succinct because, like, I probably have talked way too much on the, like, to answer your questions, and people are probably getting bored halfway through, which I found when I was editing my podcast. I was like,
oh, these poor fuckers have already listened to some 20 minutes of my monologuing with sounds behind it. So, yeah they might as well.
You're like,
they're still listening to this. They like the format.
Yeah, but so we found when we did the first one, it was closer to like 15, 20 minutes. And there'd be segments in the middle where we're like, all right, this person that we have on just needs to, like, get to the point and stop, like, just get to the point. And so as we did more episodes, we formatted it better to figure out which questions to ask and also how to be a better co-host so that we would get people to, like, get to the point and not just, like, talk in circles, which most people do.
This is our talking in circles bit of the podcast. This is the best bit.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really fun though. We just did, it was for internal purposes. So we did like news about the company. We'd start every episode. I had this really quirky coworker called Michael Salicio.
Shout out to Mike.
Shout out to Michael. I'm gonna tell him he made it on another podcast. And he would have these like words of like wisdoms for like people in PR, because he's like worked in PR for 30 years, and I would sit across from him and he was just a character. And so like he would have things where he'd say, if you can't please a client, like just get drunk with them. Like that would be his Saliciism. Or it'd be like, what did he say?
Another word of wisdom.
Yeah, so it'd be like, today's Saliciism of the week, and then we'd read it. And then we'd like try to dissect what he was actually saying, because a lot of times it wouldn't really make sense. And we'd be like, I think this is what he means. We're not sure. So we do that, and then we'd go to tech. I worked for a tech PR firm, so we do our take on like 3 top tech stories. Well, it'd be one or 2 top tech stories and 1 like funny news of the week.
No.
And then we'd do a dramatic email. It's called Another Blurb, a dramatic email reading.
Yeah, I enjoyed that bit of the segment when we were talking about this earlier.
Yeah. So we'd get someone's like really dramatic all office email, like talking about how someone left the dishes in the sink or like their lunch or something, and we'd read it and then we'd edit it and put Kenny G music over. So it'd be like da 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 da, and then we read it. We'd ask for nominations for that every week, and then we go into like it was our segment called Who Dat, and we'd interview one of our employees, usually the new intern, or like someone who just started.
Yeah. A much better way of doing this bit would have been to get you to listen to an episode of this so we could compare the two. But instead, no, we don't prepare for this podcast.
No, we just do it. But yeah, like the rapid fire questions were the best part, or like the parts where you're just like making fun of each other and stuff. Like, that's most interesting.
I'm always thinking of ways to try and like change the format of this one. And so I was thinking maybe if I come up with like 10 questions that I ask every guest or whatever that are consistent every week and just see the different answers. But I found like if you get somebody that's interesting enough on the podcast, you'll get to good places if you just talk. So
yeah. Always helps to have beer too. We'd always have beer.
Yeah. Well, if people that have listened to this, they know a lot of the time.
Beer on either end. Beer on one end or beer for the listeners. Like either end, it gets better. Yeah.
Definitely. So what other like areas of expertise have you had? What
professionally?
Did you, studied to get into? So
I double majored in marketing and environmental science in college, and so I started doing PR for sustainability PR, but it was for Walmart and Procter & Gamble.
All right.
I worked for an agency, those were my clients. And then I switched over to this small tech PR agency and worked there. And so I did a lot of like ghostwriting. I did a few web design projects where I was the one editing all the copy, and then I worked with the outside web designer.
I'm very curious about this sustainability for Walmart and what was it, Procter & Gamble?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I was an intern then. So Well, yeah.
Did
I
you
didn't
walk
have
under
any-
a banner called with greenwashing on it every day?
Yeah, basically. So, and I mean, my bosses were like, okay, well, Procter & Gamble sustainability, it is kind of greenwashing. Walmart, they actually said some really interesting stuff where Walmart does have the ability to tell suppliers like how much packaging they can have and what they're going to stock in their store.
They got big solar plants as well.
Yeah, so they actually do have, they do have a lot of like really cool environmental stuff that they do. On the other hand, like maybe what they pay their workers and like medical and all that stuff, I'm not really sure how that is, but so it depends how you look at sustainability. Yeah. When you work for like a big company like that, their creative plans and like processes and everything is like laid out years in advance. So honestly, I was just like carrying out stuff that was already done, and I was an intern, so I had no say in anything. I was just sending out emails. But
I'm wondering what it's like to be an intern in the States, because that's where the whole interning idea came from.
You don't have as many in Australia?
Oh, we do now, but the whole idea of working for free is ridiculous to me.
I only did one unpaid internship, actually, and that was in college, and I ended up getting course credit for it. So, yeah, so it wasn't really free. All the other times have been paid. It's kind of, I think it sucks. And especially for PR, you have to start as an intern. No one will hire you straight out of college as an entry-level employee.
Yeah.
So I was an intern for like 9 months, like maybe less, 8 months or something, 6 months at one agency, and then a month and a half, 2 months at another agency. And it depends what agency you're at. At the big agency, I was like in a summer program, so it ended, and then I had an opportunity to stay on, but doing food PR, and I didn't want to do that, so I switched over to something else. But yeah, and then the other agency, I was like thrown into it as a full-time employee. So it was like I was just like tested as an intern and was able to show that I could be a full-time employee. So
it was all that work part of the reason you're doing such a long trip now, just taking a break from all that craziness?
Yeah, exactly. I saved for like 3.5 years. Technically, right now, I'm a freelancer. I'm a part of our freelance network.
We've never had a freelancer on the podcast before.
I haven't actually done any freelancing, but I can. So I'm thinking about if I want to stay longer, maybe I'll do some freelance PR stuff through my agency, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Not working is good.
Yeah. And what's it like being a representative of the United States these days?
Abroad?
Do you get an awful lot of people going, what's Trump all about?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?
Well, yeah, that was one of the weirdest things actually in Chile. Chile and Argentina, every single person I met asked me, what do you think of Trump? And I haven't been asked that much in Brazil, but also like I don't speak Portuguese, so haven't had as many of those conversations. But in Chile, this guy he's like, yeah, the U.S., it's a gun country. And like I've never thought of the U.S. like that. Yeah. But it totally is. Yes. Compared to all these other, I was like, wait, you can't buy a gun in other countries, but you can in the U.S. Like, go and buy one. So yeah, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I hope that Trump doesn't win. I think it's like, it would be terrible if he does, and it's a horrible representation of the United States. But I understand how people like are, if you're uneducated about certain like things, or he's easy. He talks very passionately, and he's easy to like get people on board with it. And I've watched him speak, and I'm like, yeah, I can totally see how someone would believe this, but it's all false. But okay, like I can see how someone would believe it.
It's touching the right buttons.
Yeah, yeah. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I don't know, with regards, I think you're the first person from the States we've actually had on the podcast for that reason. But there's a lot of sort of anti-imperialist vibes when you're coming through Central America. They've all had governments that have been overturned by
the U.S.
operations, and things like this. So are you expecting to sort of, how are you going to approach those sorts of things?
Yeah, usually when I've encountered that, most people don't, like, think as me, as a that I represent the government. They're like, oh, the government is not you. So I haven't really ever experienced someone being like, I hate you personally because you're from the U.S.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm prepared for that. I think like when you travel from the U.S. and since traveling when I was young, like the U.S. does have a really bad representation abroad. It's just like the way people travel, or people are like ignorant from the U.S., or you're just like people. I don't know. It's just like a bad. All the stereotypes are there, and I think I'm just like used to it. That people feel that way.
Yeah, for me it's always Australia, land of the kangaroo. Eh?
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, I've only met 2 other Americans this entire time too.
Yeah, there's not too many of you guys traveling.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Everyone's at work. I've really enjoying traveling so far. So I'm not sick of it. Yeah, I've only been gone a month and a half, and I think
got an indefinite amount
I think
of time
I can keep going for a while. Yeah. Well, if only that money thing, but we'll figure it out.
We'll head back to the PR jobs eventually.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, I hope your listeners enjoyed my voice.
That's right. It is a good voice. Alrighty. Okay, well,
right.
Cheers. Thanks for
Okay.
And that's it for another week. Make sure if you like the show, you like the Facebook pages. That's where all the photos and things are going up. Also, if you get the chance, leave a review on iTunes, as that really helps us out. And that's it. I'll see you next week. Next week, big week, Brasilia. I do a road trip with 2 strangers, and we make our way finally to Rio de Janeiro.